Well, good morning. It's good to be here. It's fun to be back at Springwood. I feel like Dale's pretty well done my intro for me, but that's all right. It's good to be here. So I work at a little church down in Burleigh Heads, where I'm blessed to be the youth pastor there. And then with the rest of my time, I work for Church of Christ Queensland, taking care of our youth pastors and our young adults pastors and our internships across Queensland. And so I love that. I'm passionate about our young people. I'm passionate about helping create some clear discipleship pathways for our young people. And I just love the fact that I'm able to work with our churches as we build this greater statewide identity, as we continue to sort of build something where we're all working together, where we're worshipping together, where we're part of something bigger than our own individual context. So I love that I get to do that with Church of Christ Queensland, and I get to be here this morning. Another fun fact, as Dale said, my ministry journey started here. So that was my very first youth night here at Springwood with Jimin and Jacob. They interned with me in my first year in 2015. And we've come a long way from tutus and funny hats. But yeah, so that's a little bit about me now. But I wanted to start this morning by talking to you guys a little bit about Youth Kid Lachie. Youth Kid Lachie. So I don't know about you, but for me, growing up, I remember a lot about my youth group days. I'd say for me, some of my fondest memories growing up were probably memories from youth group. Does anyone else feel that? We had a lot of fun. We played a lot of games, and usually when we weren't having fun and playing games, we were making our own fun, usually at our leader's expense. And so it's important to know I wasn't a bad kid. I wasn't doing anything outrageous. I wasn't stealing things or bringing knives to youth group or anything like that. But I did like to have fun. In fact, I was probably annoying enough that, if you woke up at summer camp and you put your gumboots on and you found them full of eggs, you'd go, I know exactly who did that. I bet you it was Lachie. And then fast forward a couple of years, when I was sort of around grade 10, I was super into my sport and I wanted to be a professional triathlete. And so most of the time, if I'm being honest, my priorities were that. They were sport, they were having fun, and they weren't really church. And so as a result of that, I'd probably question how seriously I was actually taken by the people at my church. I'd question how seriously maybe I was taken by my leaders or by those others in the congregation as a kid who was just running around and, wanted to do sport and other things. But I was on a camp in grade 10, and I was sitting with my friend who, in his infinite wisdom, I think had just started a food fight or something, probably with a bunch of grade 8ers, someone not his age. And I'm sitting there, probably full well about to get involved in this, when a leader sat down next to me. And this leader sits down and he just starts a conversation. He asks me about my interests. He asks me about my passions. He asks me all the things I want to do with my life. And in that conversation, he says to me, Lachie, one day you're going to be a leader. One day you're going to be a leader. And I'm sitting there, I'm like, okay, I don't really know you. We've only just met. How does this leader thing work? When I'm a leader, am I then allowed to prank the kids? Like, what's the deal here? I don't really know you. But he was serious about me. He was serious about taking an interest in me. And after that camp, we continued to talk, and we caught up, and I asked questions, and we built this relationship. And as a result of that, he's probably been one of the greatest influences in my ministry journey and where I am today. Added bonus, got to marry his sister. I'd say that worked out pretty well for me too. And now we're brothers, so even better. But the point is, someone saw value in 15-year-old Lachie. Someone saw value in 15-year-old Lachie who was probably about to get involved in a food fight at a youth camp and thought, I'm going to talk to him. He saw value in 15-year-old Lachie. And that's a little bit of what I want to talk about this morning. Today I want to look at a passage. It's in the Gospel of Luke, chapter 2. And what I found interesting about this as I looked at the chapter and the rest of Luke was that it made me realize that a lot of the time we only really look at Jesus as a man, right? We look at the Bible and we have this abundance of stories of Jesus in his later years of ministry. In fact, like most churches, that's almost the only way we look at him unless it's Christmas and we're talking about him as a baby. Most of the time we only look at him as a man. But we forget that, once upon a time, Jesus was a child. And realistically, that's probably because the Bible doesn't really talk about it that much. We hear very little to nothing about Jesus as a boy and when he grew and how he grew up. Did he go for sleepovers with his friends? Did he ever break a window at youth? Did he prefer to play Fortnite or Minecraft after a day at school? We don't know a lot about Jesus as a boy. We learn and see so many great examples of how we're to live as godly men and how we're to live as godly women and how we're called as a church to do ministry, but where is the instruction manual on how to raise a teen? Where is it? Where's the key, the undiscovered key to running a youth ministry? Where are the stories about these formative years that lead to who he became? The lessons from around that age where maybe he was in grade 7, starting to go in grade 8, and he's facing those formative years of life where he's starting to face the threshold of the adult he will become. And so there are only a couple of verses at the end of this chapter, and that's pretty much it. It's one of the only real glimpses we get into his childhood around this section in Luke. But as we dig deeper into this short story, I think there's actually still a lot we can learn. There's a lot we can learn about these key formative years in his life and the formative, I suppose, influences that helped Jesus become the man he became. And so this morning we're going to dive into the end of Luke, and so we're going to start by reading it. Geez, that's a bit small, isn't it? Every year, Jesus' parents went to Jerusalem for the festival of the Passover. When he was 12 years old, they went up to the festival according to the custom. And after the festival was over, while his parents were returning home, the boy Jesus stayed behind in Jerusalem, but they were unaware of it. Thinking he was in their company, they traveled on for a day. They began looking for him among their relatives and friends. When they did not find him, they went back to Jerusalem to look for him. And after 3 days, they found him in the temple courts, sitting amongst the teachers, listening to them and asking them questions. Everyone who heard him was amazed at his understanding and his answers. When his parents saw him, they were astonished. His mother said to him, "Son, why have you treated us like this? Your father and I have been anxiously searching for you." "Why were you searching for me?" he asks. "Didn't you know I had to be in my father's house?" But they did not understand what he was saying to them. And then he went down to Nazareth with them and was obedient to them. But his mother treasured all these things in her heart, and Jesus grew in wisdom and stature and in favor with God and man. So here we have this story. Jesus has gone to Jerusalem for the Passover festival. And when it's all done, his parents have hitched up their Jacob's swan to their camel at the Jerusalem caravan park, and they've started to head home. And only after a day of traveling, they start to realize they can't find Jesus. That there should tell us a little bit of what Jesus was like as a kid. It took them a whole day of nagging lists. "Are we there yet? I'm hungry," for them to go, "Hang on, it has been a little bit quiet. Where's Jesus? Where is he?" And so we have the perfect kid, right? And we have the perfect parents, and they lose him. And so they head back to Jesus in Jerusalem, and they spend 3 days looking for him, probably checking all the places you'd expect to find a teenager, before eventually finding him at the temple, sitting with the teachers, listening and asking them questions. He's a 12-year-old boy that ran off, and these teachers, they could have yelled at him. They could have said, "What are you doing here? This is not where you're supposed to be." But instead, they sat with him, and they answered his questions. And so once his parents find him, they speak, and they head back to Nazareth, where it says he was obedient to them and he grew in wisdom and stature and in favor with God and man. And so there's 2 points, I think, that we can look at this morning, and the first is this. The first is that we are all youth leaders. We are all youth leaders. I want you guys to say it with me. You ready? We are all youth leaders. Let's do it again. We are all youth leaders. Awesome. Eva's going to be at the back at the end. You'll get your youth leader shirt. And how's Friday sound? We good? No, I'm joking. The first thing I notice in this passage is that we can see here that Mary and Joseph, his parents, took action to train their child in the ways of God, in the things of God. Every year, Joseph and Mary made the trip to Jerusalem. They had established a predictable pattern of honoring God for their child. Solomon wrote, "Train up a child in the way that they should go, and when they are old, they will not depart from it." His parents, they lived it out. They were actively honoring God in their lives and establishing patterns for Jesus to follow. See, what we have is there has to be this partnership between our families and what we do at church on a Friday night, or at Sunday school on a Sunday, and what we do at home throughout the rest of the week. Now, I know at this point it could be tempting to switch off. Maybe you're sitting there going, well, I don't have kids in that age bracket. I'm not a youth leader anymore. This isn't really applicable to me. It's not really relevant. But there's another character in these verses that we've just read. And that's the teachers. These people who were full of wisdom and rich life experience, who instead of rousing on the boy for doing the wrong thing, for running away, saw value in this young person and sat and listened and answered his questions. What I'm trying to say here is that youth ministry isn't just something we can outsource to the youth leaders on a Friday night. It's not something we can just outsource to our leaders on a Friday night. We have to have a more holistic approach. We have to have a whole body approach. See, if we look at Jesus, if we look at his key influences in the beginning of these formative years of his life, they're his parents taking him to the Passover, and they're him talking to these teachers at the temple, these people with rich life experience and wisdom. We all have an immensely valuable part we can play in the lives of our young people. Youth ministry goes beyond what we do on a Friday night. We're called to be disciples who make disciples, and so in a way, we are all youth leaders. We are all youth leaders. How we react and how we respond and interact with our youth and children is more valuable than you could ever imagine. So I encourage you that as spiritual parents and grandparents, your relationship with that kid who maybe just tripped you over as he sprinted down the hallway, or that kid who just put a footy through the window on Friday night, or that kid that maybe just grunted at you this morning when you said good morning, your relationship with that kid is just as important as what we do on a Friday night. It's just as important as what we do on a Friday night. There's an African proverb and it says, it takes a village... No, I don't have the slide. It takes a village to raise a child, meaning an entire community. A village, an entire community, not just the leaders, not just a small section of young adults. An entire community must provide for and interact positively with children for those children to experience and grow in a safe and healthy environment. No matter how challenging or frustrating young people can be, there is a challenge here to look past that and to see the immense value in investing in our young people, especially while they're in these key formative years. Just like my story at the beginning, with my leader Ben, who saw the value in me. Never underestimate the value of a young person, even if they're about to throw peas in corn. Never underestimate the value of the influence you can have on a young person's life just by simply starting the conversation. We are all youth leaders. The second thing I want to look at this morning is this. There are three key attributes that it then goes on to speak of. Three key attributes that it says Jesus went away and grew in. And you need to remember, he didn't just learn these things on his own. He didn't just wake up one morning and go, yep, I've got it all. He didn't just learn it on his own. It gives us an idea of these key things that these people around him, this support network, his village, right, his church community, were influencing him in. The key godly attributes that they were demonstrating to him, that they were discussing, that they were discipling, and that taught him in his formative years. And these are to grow in wisdom and stature and in favor with God and man. So what does it look like to actually grow in each of these? Theoretically, practically. I want to start with wisdom. When we look at wisdom, sometimes I think when we talk about wisdom with young people, we just think it's about making wise choices. We think it's about, choosing the right thing over that wild and reckless decision that your friends might be making, and that's sort of what we communicate to them a lot at youth. And whilst those might be wise decisions, that and that might take an element of wisdom, but what does it actually look like to have deep biblical wisdom? What does it look like to have deep biblical wisdom? How can we grow in deep, gospel-centered, God-focused wisdom? And I think it's really simple. The first thing is that we can just simply study the Bible to gain wisdom. We can study the Bible to gain wisdom. God has blessed us with this instruction manual on how to live our lives. He's given us this instruction manual on how to handle certain situations. Most of the time, we just simply forget to open it up. We can study the Bible to gain wisdom. And secondly, we can spend time in prayer to grow wisdom. As wise as we think we might be, there is someone with infinite wisdom who wants to talk to us, who wants to communicate with us and share with us, who wants to spend time with us. And I'm sure you would all know how beneficial it is when we put practices of prayer in our lives. We can spend time in prayer to grow wisdom. And thirdly, we can use wisdom to strengthen each other. We need to look back at what Jesus was doing in this passage. Jesus spent time with the teachers, asking questions, learning from them. And it says too that not just was he learning from them, but that the teachers were astonished and impressed with what he had to say as well. We need to remember that we should never underestimate the profound things that a young person might say to us. The things that they may have learnt or experienced from their perspective. And so we should do the same. Have we got places like that in our lives? Are we pursuing opportunities in our lives to have those conversations where we ask questions, where we're learning from each other, where we're coming together with a regular rhythm of asking and learning from each other and growing in wisdom? Maybe that's a small group. Maybe that's a mentor. We can study the Bible to gain wisdom. We can spend time in prayer to grow wisdom, and we can use this wisdom to strengthen one another. The second thing it talks about is stature. Now we look at stature, there's probably two separate things that they could have been talking about here. The first is I'm sure he grew up. I'm sure he didn't stay the height he was when he was 12 for the rest of his life. He probably grew, he probably had a healthy life. But I think more importantly, they were probably likely talking about his stature of character. And so this morning I want to focus on that. In a moment I want you to turn to the person next to you. But first I want you to take a moment to think of someone you admire. Think of someone you admire and the two attributes that you admire most about them. And then share that with the person next to you. Off you go. Awesome. Maybe you thought of their talents or their skills or their strength or their intelligence or their kind-heartedness. But I'm sure, and I imagine it's most likely that the things you talked about right now, their attributes, probably had to do with their character, right? Probably wasn't that they're tall or that they're blonde or that they're handsome. It was probably something to do with their characteristics. Growing in stature means developing a character and a reputation. You know, we are always growing in character in some way. And so the first question we need to ask ourselves is, what sort of character, what sort of stature am I building? What sort of example, what sort of character am I modeling to those around me? Because there is something really important about stature for us and character, particularly when we start to look at our young people. Sometimes we can underestimate the significance of our actions. Our relationship and how we act is more important than we think because young people are always watching. They are always watching. And so they're going to pick up the good characteristics and they're going to pick up the bad characteristics. They learn from us. Just like Mary and Joseph taking Jesus to the Passover, they learn predictable patterns. They learn from us what church attendance looks like. They learn from us what leadership looks like. They learn from us what openly worshiping looks like. They learn from us what hospitality looks like. They learn from us what kindness looks like. Our stature is important because not only is it our first impression to people when we meet them, but it's because it's how we're going to shape the next generation. Our stature is important because it's how you're going to shape the next generation. And lastly, favor with God and man. It seems like a difficult task, this one. It seems hard to please both God and man, or to gain the favor of God and man. You know, so much of what people want us to do is kind of the opposite of what God wants us to do. You know, even our best friends or co-workers or relatives can do things to gain, can ask us or want us to do things to gain their favor that may not be what God is asking us to do. And I think that in that process, sometimes we misunderstand what favor means. And so I was looking into this, and I think the best way is pretty well laid out in the first of the two 10 commandments in Matthew 22:37 to 39. It says, Jesus says, "Love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your mind. This is the first and greatest commandment. And the second is like it. Love your neighbors as yourself." We need to love everyone because we are loved. In order to love well, we have to remember that we are loved first. It's nothing we can earn. We simply accept the love God has given us through Jesus. 1 John 1:4 says, This is love, not that we loved God, but that he loved us and sent his son as an atoning sacrifice for our sins. See, God shows us favor first, and we grow in favor with him when we appreciate his love and respond with our lives, not just by loving him, but also by loving the people he has made as much as we love ourselves. We need to love because we are loved. If we're willing to offer our whole life to God, we become the strongest possible instruments for loving others. Other people will see how we love. They will see if we love God, and above all other things, and they will see how we love others, and if we love others as we love ourselves. Loving our kids, our neighbors, and others over ourselves teaches others to do the same. And so we want to be modeling this to our kids. We want to be preparing the next generation for what they're going to face. One of the themes of Luke is that Jesus is enough. And so we don't want to bubble wrap our young people. We don't want to coddle them. We want to build our youth up in a way that they can handle the world that we live in, with a robust faith that's centered on wisdom, that's centered on stature, and centered on the fact that Jesus is enough. We want to set them up so that they're equipped and prepared for what it looks like to grow in favor with God and man. Maybe you're sitting there this morning thinking, well, my time's passed. I'm no longer in that stage of life. I've passed my formative years. I've done all the growing in wisdom and stature and favor that I need to. Let me challenge you that if we are going to positively impact this next generation, then we need to make sure that we're doing this. We need to make sure that no matter where we are on the age spectrum, we're practicing and growing in these things. My prayer for you as a church this morning is that you would take this invitation to continue to pursue these godly practices, where we can grow in wisdom, where we can grow in stature, and in favor with God and man. And so I've got some reflective questions here that you can look at this week, whether that's on your own or in a small group. Am I making time to gain and grow in wisdom? Are we reading the Bible and praying? And who am I meeting with to strengthen my wisdom? What sort of character and stature am I modeling to those around me? What are some characteristics and attributes in my life that I'd like to work on? And how can I stop trying to please people and start loving them instead? As we wrap up this morning, let me remind you again of the incredible impact we can have in a young person's life if we as a collective community of spiritual parents, spiritual grandparents, just pause and see the value in these young people. if we look beyond the exterior of grunts and groans and instead just try to influence our young people in a way that challenges them to grow in stature, in wisdom, and in favor with God and man, just like the people that influenced Jesus. Imagine the influence we could have on the next generation of our young people in our churches. Imagine the impact we could have on our community, right? Imagine the way we could just simply influence each other. We are all youth leaders. So let's find ways to grow ourselves in wisdom and in stature and in favor with God and man this week. Let's pray. God, I just thank you for this faithful community here at Springwood. I thank you that every single one of us has a piece to play in this grander body of Christ. And so, Lord, I just pray that as we sit here this morning, that you can just remind and encourage each and every one of us that we are significant and that we are important and that we should never underestimate the value of the life experience and wisdom that we can have and pour into our young people. Lord, I just thank you for the young people here at Springwood. I thank you that they're so deeply loved and that they have such a wonderful team of young adults that want to take care and lead them. And I just thank you for that as well. And so, God, I just thank you for this church. I thank you for this morning. I thank you for Jesus. And so, Lord, I just pray that as we go out of here this week, you can challenge us, you can convict us, and you can just prompt us to begin to grow in wisdom and in stature and in favor with God and man. God, just soften our hearts toward our young people when they're challenging, when they grunt, when they put a hole in the wall before that big event at church. And just remind us that they are loved and that they are the future. And that without us, they're a rudderless ship, Lord. That we have so much of a role in modeling them. And so, God, I just thank you for all the parents, all the teachers, all the people with wisdom in this room and life experience. And I just thank you for how they can go out this week and start investing in our young people. So, God, I just pray that you can speak through this message this morning and that you can just challenge us in our hearts where you are calling us to be challenged. Thank you for young people, and thank you that we are all youth leaders. Amen.